Power on. Line in. Bluetooth connected.
Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check.
Can I pass this finance sheet around for everyone to sign, please? Yes.
All righty, we're going to get started, y'all. We want to come fill in. We got some people eating over there. Eating everywhere. Man, thank you so much, and hello to everybody. Thank y'all for coming. Hello to everybody on our Facebook stream. Another iteration of our monthly Cap Talk. Thank you so much. We get a lot of people online that watch. Some people, a lot of people work. They have other obligations, so we appreciate the people that show up. We also appreciate the people that, pay attention on our Facebook stream. This particular month is something that's really special. This would be a really special one. We have our friends here from the Saginaw Defenders Office. They're here on a Know Your Rights campaign. And, we had a great conversation with them here recently on a different front. But and this idea came out of that conversation. And so we're grateful to have all of the attorneys and everybody from the office, from the Saginaw Defenders Office. So we're here to give a presentation and also to answer some questions you may have about your rights as a citizen. And so without further ado, I want to bring up the attorney, good friend of mine, Jeremy Taylor.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I know this was initially beginning as a defender's presentation. I'm no longer a defender. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeremy Tatum. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Saginaw. Recently started at the law firm, Tatum & Ayo Attorneys at Law. Prior to starting this firm, I was at the Saginaw Defenders Office for approximately 4.5, almost 5 years. So I've been practicing in the area for about 6 years. So certainly want to thank Camp, Mr. Bulls, Ms. Dorsey for reaching out. I believe when we talk about knowing your rights, particularly from a criminal perspective, that this is right for the taking right now. So I tend to try to do things not from a lecturing standpoint, but more so from a practical standpoint. All right. Everybody knows that you have the right to remain silent. Everybody knows you have the right to be free from unlawful searches and seizures. But the question becomes, what does that look like practically? What does that look like when I'm in a traffic stop? What does that look like when I'm in a custodial interrogation? What is a custodial interrogation? When am I free to leave? Those are the questions, I believe, from a criminal standpoint, as a defense attorney, that I see the most questions. So I want to take a bit of a overview and describe some of the things that I see in my practice and where I see the greatest need for us as a community to become more aware of. And so one of the most common issues, and I know Cap has been exploring this issue for a while, traffic stops, right? There's a huge concern about traffic stops and how it leads to searches of my vehicle, searches of my person, all right? One of the things that we have to understand is a significant majority of the traffic stops we see in Saginaw County are a result of traffic infractions. And the issue becomes compounded because we're driving without a license, all right? We're driving with no registration. We're driving with no insurance. And what typically happens is the traffic stop occurs, an individual does not have a license, and then the officers begin to ask questions. What are my rights? Do I have to answer those questions? when you have a right to remain silent. Okay? The problem is when you're committing an offense, for example, driving without a license, it becomes an arrestable offense. And the question becomes, is the officer going to arrest me? Are they going to allow me to leave? Okay? That's the trick question, right? Because if I consent to a search, my rights are not violated. If I don't consent to the search and I'm arrested, it becomes a search incident to a lawful arrest. Okay? So when I see individuals trying to assert their rights, you have to know what right you are asserting and how to properly do it. So we don't get into the most common police officer resisting and obstructing statute. Okay? So if you're going to assert the right of denying the consent to search, which is absolutely your right, you have to understand that if you're asserting their right, that there is not potential collateral consequences as a result of doing so. Okay? Officers have discretion to make an arrest in certain offenses. But if you assert the right and deny that consent to search and you are subsequently arrested, the search and the contents of that search become increasingly more difficult for the defense attorney to come in and suppress. Okay? One of the additional questions that I see quite often, particularly during traffic stops, the officer has asked an individual out of the vehicle. Do I have to? The officer asked. Pennsylvania versus Mims is a Supreme Court case that controls whether or not an individual during a traffic stop has to exit a vehicle. All right? A lot of people say, well, this is just a traffic stop. You don't need me to get out of my vehicle. Michigan Supreme Court case law has a lot of case law on that as well. If the officer exercises his or her discretion to allow you to remain in the vehicle, then that's okay. But if the officer asks you to step out of the vehicle during a traffic stop, it is perfectly legal. And I say that because quite often people refuse to get out of the vehicle and you're violating the law. And by the violation of that law, now you get into the felony territory, potentially, of the police officer resisting statute, because now you've escalated a traffic stop that may or may not yield anything, and now you're committing a felony, unknowingly. And so again, if you're going to assert the right, you have to know what that right is and how to properly do so. Okay? So if you're engaged in a traffic stop and the officer is actually exit the vehicle. If there's subsequent misconduct that occurs on the part of law enforcement, I tell people 100% of the time, your battle is not on the streets. Your battle is not on the streets. Your battle is in the courtroom. Okay? Your battle is in the courtroom. Your battle is with your attorney. Okay? The moment you engage law enforcement and you're fighting, you're using profanity, you're telling them that they're violating your rights on the street, you are complicating the issue that the lawyers have to litigate. Okay? So if you feel like your rights are being violated, you can exercise your most important right, which is your right to remain silent. Okay? I have never told a client, you messed up the case because you exercised your right to remain silent. What happens most of the time is party admissions coming, statements by the individual that creates a barrier to the legal defense that we have to assert in the courtroom. Okay? So when we talk about traffic stops, the first thing that you want to do, make sure you're driving with a valid license, number one. Make sure you have your vehicle properly registered, and make sure that your vehicle has insurance. Those are the most common issues we see law enforcement conducting traffic stops. Okay? I sometimes get people saying, oh, the police were just following me. Well, the Supreme Court has said that is a part of law enforcement duty. So if the police are riding behind you and running your plate, that's in plain view. That's the legal doctrine. It's open and obvious for the public to see. So that's not going to get scrutinized by the Supreme Court. And I talk about the case law of the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, because that's how the lawyers assess a case. That's how we figure out how we're going to provide a defense for an individual. The court doesn't speak necessarily from the bench all the time. The court speaks through its written orders. Okay? So when we think about what's happening roadside, make sure you're operating the vehicle properly. Make sure, if nothing else, you exercise your right to remain silent. I sometimes have conversations with clients. I hear it often in the community. With the general, they violated my rights. They didn't read me my rights. All right? We're talking about the Miranda warnings. Everyone has heard it before. You have the right to remain silent. All right? Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law, and so forth. Miranda warnings are only required during custodial interrogation. What's custodial interrogation? Something lawyers litigate all the time. Okay? There's a nuanced analysis between when I'm detained and when I'm arrested. Okay? From when I'm arrested till when I am now confined and not free to leave. Some people say when I'm detained, I'm no longer free to leave. Okay? If the officer is detaining you, Miranda warnings are not required. I'm going to take a question in just a moment. If you are detained, the officer is not required to read you Miranda warning. If the officer begins to solicit questions and ask you to make statements that are now going to be reduced to a police report, that are now going to be used in criminal proceedings, now we're beginning to have some analysis on whether or not those statements should come in. If you're in a custodial interrogation in a room with a locked door, and I am not free to come and go, custodial interrogation is pretty clear. What the lawyers often litigate is from detainment to arrest, whether or not an individual is free to leave and whether or not he or she should have been read his or her Miranda warnings. But I see a question, so I'll take the question if I can.
Well, I was just curious, so like if you're detained, that means that maybe you weren't arrested, but they're asking you a bunch of questions or they want some information from you. But so during that time, they don't have to read you your Miranda rights then?
That is correct.
That is correct. Well, even if they're asking information?
That is correct. So you're going to walk a fine line, and this is a point of contention, okay? And I'll solicit the support of Ms. Slomsky as another defense attorney in the room on this issue. This is a point of contention as the lawyers litigate because quite often I'm arguing that this individual is detained and not free to leave, all right? One of the most important things that we have to know as citizens is ignorance of the law is not a defense, okay? We may disagree on that, but ignorance of the law is not a defense. So you have to know these things. I can ask the officer, am I detained? Am I free to go? I don't have to answer anything beyond that, okay? So if the officer is doing what they sometimes call investigative stops, they may solicit information. You are not obligated to participate in that investigation, okay? There are oftentimes individuals think that if I just tell my side of the story, right? that I can tell the officer what's right and I get to go home. That's not always the case. Okay? Ms. Rusty.
Yeah, I was just gonna add one little thing, because everything Jeremy's saying is a general proposition, is how it should be. Exercise that right to remain silent. There's always in the law these little exceptions and stuff. For example, you're sitting in a car and the police officers come and get the driver's license, and then they say to you, is there a gun in the car? Well, you're not free to remain silent there on that point, okay? In fact, it's a traffic infraction misdemeanor to do so. If you have a CPL and you say, I don't have a gun in the car, they'll take the CPL. If you don't have a CPL for a gun, besides the CCW problems, likelihood of getting a CPL thereafter. So there's like all these little wrinkles and stuff. As a general rule, yeah, better to say nothing than something, but there's times where, for example, you're on the street, officers can ask you your name, for example, and you're required to give that information. But, you know, in terms of factual information, you know, there's a lot of things they can ask, but I'm just telling you, particularly in the context of a pistol situation, there's affirmative obligations to indicate there's a gun in the car.
Yeah, Pat makes a good point, but in the legal world, sometimes we often look for generalizations, right? But the lawyers always say that it's fact specific. I need to talk to you about your case, what happened to you, because what happened to person A may be similar in terms of the charges and the outcome, but not necessarily in how we got there. And so the lawyer always looks at each case fact specific to figure out what occurred and how do we get to where they're going to, okay? If we're dealing with a concealed pistol, for example, individuals that have concealed pistol license, that's one of the things that you're taught, okay? When a traffic stop occurs, you have to declare, okay? And failure to do so has civil infractions all the way up to criminal, okay? But if I'm an individual that doesn't have a CPL, and I have a firearm in a vehicle, I'm now charged with a 5-year felony for carrying a concealed weapon. Michigan is an open carry state, knowing your rights, okay? Michigan is an open carry state, but the moment you get into that vehicle, it becomes a concealed weapon, okay? So again, if we're asserting those rights, you have to know how to properly assert them, okay? And I can't go through each specific statute, but this is why we always say the law is voluminous, okay? Even as an attorney, I sometimes go back to statutes to look for those nuances based on particular facts and circumstances that are in front of me. But as a generalization, you're talking about the 4th Amendment, searches and seizures, 5th Amendment, right against self-incrimination, 6th Amendment, all right, and custodial interrogation and things of that nature. At a very high, broad level, these are general rights that could get very nuanced depending on the facts and circumstances of the case. All right? Are there any other particular questions that anybody has? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My question would be, trying to make it broad, but probably many people in here may know about this one particular case. But when you say you must advise the officer to stop you, that you have a weapon, is there ever a time where you just, say for instance, you're snatched out your vehicle before you can let them know? When you know what I'm saying? Is there a difference in me saying, if, you know, when I'm being snatched out, do I say it? When I'm on the ground, do I say it? Where do I have the time to say I have a weapon when you have treated me this particular way and I haven't really, in my opinion, had the time to say to you, I have a weapon?
Before I answer that question, is there ongoing litigation in that area?
I don't know, but I'm just trying, that's why I'm trying to be as broad I can.
All right.
Because I know it has happened other places besides,
Sure.
so that's why I try to make it broad as I can.
So, if an individual is pulled over during a traffic stop and he or she is carrying a concealed weapon, sometimes individuals may not say anything to law enforcement, okay? Sometimes the officers may approach and greet. They may immediately ask for license and registration. In those instances, before you answer any other question, you need to declare, okay? If, based on the circumstances that you seem to describe, that this individual hasn't had that opportunity, okay? And this is, again, what we're talking about with fact-specific cases, all right? This could be a one-off in this particular scenario. Your remedy is to address it in court, okay? I wouldn't advise that individual to then fight with them, okay? I've represented a lot of individuals that were charged with crimes and then those charges went away. But what they did is they allowed the officers, okay? And I know that can get sticky because not everyone wants to acquiesce to what we perceive to be misconduct, okay? But again, your remedy is not out there, okay?
Thank you.
I wanted to present a question from our Facebook stream.
Okay.
The question was asked, when and why is the question of a weapon being present even asked during a routine traffic stop? I guess he's trying to say, do you always have to declare?
If you're under a concealed pistol, okay? Under concealed pistol license, you always have to declare, okay? An individual that's not licensed to carry shouldn't have it, unless it's separated, right? But I want to answer that question just a little bit further. And there's extensive case law in Michigan, particularly about law enforcement and traffic stops. Traffic stops are probably one of the highest moments in time where officers get hurt in the line of duty. And so the Michigan Supreme Court highly favors, under current case law, officer safety. Okay? So if an officer is approaching and he or she is asking that question, he or she is going to always justify it as officer safety. Okay? And I think we know of some scenarios locally where that's been an issue. Yes, ma'am.
Is it the same having a weapon, say firearm, inside the person of the vehicle as opposed to in the trunk? Would those same laws or policies and procedures be the same as me having a weapon in the trunk and maybe not loaded?
So there's a few different statutes that you're implicating there.
Okay.
And I don't want to get down into the specifics,
Okay.
because that's a whole separate presentation in and of itself.
Okay.
But you're delineating what's a firearm, small handgun versus rifle, different sets of laws. But if I assume what you're asking is small firearm, there is a proper way to carry firearms inside the vehicle, inside the trunk. And as a general rule of thumb, firearms should be in a lock box in your trunk, ammunition separate from the firearm. That's not a violation of the law. The violation occurs when the ammunition is in the cabin of the vehicle, readily accessible.
Okay.
That's the nuances that the lawyers have to look at when we talk about how do we figure out if this is actually a violation of the law, because there have been times where an individual has went so far as to separate ammunition, except for the firearm is in the trunk but not in the lockbox. Okay? Those are those nuances that we have to look at.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do undocumented citizens have the same rights as American-born citizens or illegal immigrants? Do they have any rights at all?
Immigration is not my area of law. So I would abstain, but I think Ms. Slomski
Well,
wants to chime in.
I'm not an immigration expert either. That's why we all have our little niches and stuff, because law is complicated, right? We don't all do every area of the law. But I printed out a bunch of ACLU pamphlets. It includes the immigration questions as well as the stop information. So, somewhere in the middle of that, there's some basic information on your immigration question, and it'll answer it much better than I can.
Any others? Any other questions? Seeing none? No other questions? All right. If none, I just wanted to give just a general overview. If you know someone that have questions, my office is available to answer those questions. I know the Public Defender's Office is available. I won't speak for them, but I know their doors are always open as well. I do hope that we can continue to do more of this in the community in the days coming. This has been something that I've wanted to do for quite a while. However, I am starting a new practice and expanding, and we're trying to do some good for this community. So we tend to do a lot of the work that doesn't go noticed all the time, but we are out here and we are fighting for the people in this community. So thank you for having me. And Jeff Bulls and Ms. Dorsey have my contact information if you all need to reach me. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Jeremy. Thank you so much for coming. I know this is Saturdays are tough, because we all work during the week. We got kids and families and wives, emphasis on wives, and honey-do lists and all that stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much. Great information.
Yes,
Awesome information. My Facebook people, I hope y'all are paying attention. Take some notes. I don't know who I'm bringing up next, but I don't know if you had a presentation or any thoughts or anything that you wanted to share.
Well, I was basically here. At this point, since Jeremy was here, I didn't really know. So but I just did want to indicate to you, there's an excellent resource person that I had contacted when I had talked to Maria about this. Her name is Robin McCoy. Robin is running for the state legislature. She's from Detroit area. She's really well known. She and a man by the name of Ed Taylor have a radio program as well in Detroit. It's 910, and which is really, really excellent program. Takes calls, deals a lot with special interests of the Black community and in specific problems. They're both very, very knowledgeable. Robin is A1. It's unfortunate I contacted Robin in kind of the last minute. She said, "Oh, I would really love to come up here." So I'm just telling you, Robin told me she'd love to come up here if somebody invites her.
We're going to hold you to that, Robin.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm telling you, she is a number one. I could recommend her more highly, and I would contact her. I would suggest that you contact her, or let us know at the office so we can contact her. But I'm telling you, she's very easily, very accessible. She's on Facebook. Like I said, she's connected to the 910 radio program in Detroit. So
Yes.
anyway, her name is Robin McCoy. So
Okay.
she does a lot of these Know Your Rights kind of presentations.
Okay. Great. Let's get that information, and we'll definitely make that connection, because this won't be the only time we do this. This is neat.
She even has a PowerPoint. She's got it.
Perfect.
She's got it.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So I'll bring up Miss Maria, from the Saginaw Defenders Office. Give Maria a hand.
Okay, I've never really used a microphone, so I'm Maria Romo. I am the social worker at the Saginaw Defenders Office. I've been there for about 2 years. Before then, I worked at White Pine Psychiatric Unit as an inpatient therapist. After that, I did crisis work at our community mental health here. And then my last 2 years at community mental health, I was the jail diversion specialist, which kind of segued me into being the first social worker at the Defenders Office. So being the first social worker is based on the idea of having a holistic approach. So not just legally helping somebody, but helping them all around in different areas of their life so they can be more successful. If that is through mental health services, substance abuse, employment, housing, which I don't have those personal answers, but I coordinate and link people to hopefully have a better outcome. So part of what I do is I definitely go meet with people in jail. I meet with people at their house. I talk with family members. Any loved ones that call me, I try to be supportive because I hope we all know that a lot of times when people are in legal situations, they need a lot of support. And unfortunately, sometimes a lot of people get abandoned during those times. So whatever I can do to help make up for that, I'm more than willing to do. And a lot of times that means I get calls from people who aren't our clients. I have no problem still assisting, even if it's at a different attorney's office, but that other attorney has to give me permission to do so. But if it's a family member calling, I have no problem. I want to help. I want to do whatever I can to be of assistance. So I work a lot with the jail. I bring in medication when I can because they have a formulary. They don't like to pay for certain medications. But if I can coordinate with community mental health to bring those medications in, I will do that. I go to court with people for support because sometimes just sitting there is so anxiety provoking. You might not even remember a damn thing that just happened. But you're responsible to go out and follow all of those directions and rules that they've given you. But if you were so nervous, it didn't make sense. I give court recommendations. So as long as the attorney has consulted me, if I have some recommendations for treatment as alternative sentencing, I do that. I also do things with bond recommendations. So if somebody maybe has a high bond, I'll try to coordinate with the attorney to come up with other options so maybe they can get a PR bond to treatment or a PR bond and follow A, B, C, and D. Just anything that can do to try to help mitigate those circumstances that are currently going on. What else do I do? There's a lot of things, but I had it all written down, but I want to look like I know what I'm talking about, so I don't want to do it. But mainly my big thing now is I want to be accessible. And so I'm so grateful for Kath and specifically Danita and Jeff for embracing us and helping us with this platform. So, yeah. Is there any questions for me? Yes?
Just a general question. When are the most, what do you get? I got a few different thoughts in my head. Because I know a lot of people don't know what the Saginaw Defenders Office even does. When is the most ideal time for someone who may be facing some type of legal action? Is it just them calling you guys? Are you already in the court system?
So that's a really great question because, I've been able to identify some barriers with what my position is, and I'm hoping to come up with more solutions because how I work is usually dependent on a referral from the attorney. So if the attorney identifies something that's a problem area, they can say, hey, maybe our social worker can help with this. But it's also working when maybe if our other staff are familiar with something or a family member can reach out to me. Does that answer what you're saying?
It does.
Okay. And also we're trying to be in more public spaces so that way people do know we exist and what our mission is. So.
Can I add a little bit to that, Jeff?
Yep.
So, I didn't stand up. Do all that. So I'm no longer a public defender anymore, but I think your question encompassed just a little bit more because prior to getting to Maria, I think you're trying to ask how do individuals get to the public defender's office.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So it starts at the stage of arraignment. So say an individual is charged with a crime. Okay? He or she has an outstanding warrant. They either walk into the court, contact the court to a walk-in arraignment, or they're arrested on the street. Okay? And then they have to get arraigned by the magistrate or the judge on that particular day. What then happens following arraignment is they're going to receive a referral to the Office of Assigned Counsel and be screened. And based on their eligibility, then they get referred to the Office of Assigned Counsel, hence the Public Defender's Office. Okay? Not all individuals that are screened for various reasons get sent to the Public Defender's Office. And there's also another lane of attorneys that provide court-appointed work as well, and I still remain on that list to do so as an obligation to the community as well. But whether they're at the Public Defender's Office or external and with an attorney in private practice, I believe what Maria's suggestion is that she can still be a resource accessible to these individuals, but the attorneys need to reach out to Ms. Romo for that coordination.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Yes, I used to be a psychiatric social worker, and work's kind of the same thing. In fact, spent a short stint in jail. I couldn't get it for them. The jail resources, at least in Genesee County, was sparse. The deputies were not empathetic or lost, one of the two, and or both.
Yes, that's still currently happening.
How successful are you in diverting some of the, like, SPMI, severe, mentally ill, off to, like, a forensic center or some other more appropriate?
Well, that is challenging because the jail has their own social work and medical department that are to be providing treatment, but it's very limited to what they provide, as you're probably aware of. So if there is a person that is identified, like if they're waiting on a bed for a state hospital, I do try to contact the Center for Forensic Psychiatry directly, but there's a huge waiting list just because of the state of all of our resources. We're very limited with so many things, but I do try to really advocate, and if I can get somebody in there or even into a specialized AFC in the interim, that can be really helpful too, because at least that's better than them sitting in jail. And I have noticed that at least my interactions with the court, when I've made recommendations, I do feel like the court they're agreeable with that. I think they also want other options and solutions versus just what historically they've been given. So I have found that, but it's a huge challenge.
How is your, do you have a judge that does the psychiatric stuff specialized in?
Well, we have a probate judge.
Okay.
What I think,
The home court too.
yeah, we have specialty courts, but that's anybody. You don't have to be in mental health court or specialty court to be, forensically interviewed or be, go through that process. That's something separate from that. Yeah, but it's still very challenging to get that treatment. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Thank you so very much for your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Got a couple questions now, but one would be, do you work at all with Judge Trice in the drug court? And how difficult is it to maybe recommend someone for that? I don't know if you pay for that or what.
I do, for our office, I do make specialty court referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So depending if it's drug court, sobriety court, mental health court, I do assist do that, but they have their own treatment set into those specialty courts. And part of my role as a social worker in the Defender's Office is I cannot be clinical.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't provide any treatment, although I may be pretty supportive and empathetic. I can't really give them any type of treatment like that. But we do work with those specialty courts and make referrals.
Okay, and so my next question would be, let's just say a person maybe has a good case, they might be getting ready to get off and get out, but there is some maybe mental issues, however, addiction issues, that whole cluster.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that we would want them question out. We want them out, you know,
In the
of the
community?
system, out of the system, as far as, okay, you're getting ready to be released, okay, bye. Or would it be better or fair to say, I'm asking what your office saying, hey, Monique needs some mental health,
Absolutely.
even though she's going to be released, but we
Oh,
want
yeah.
to see her get
It's the
some mental health.
continuation of care,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So somebody might be stable, doing well because they have supervised, even if it's jail, it's supervised, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
But no, that's when the treatment really starts, is when they get released.
Okay.
They still need supportive care. And even if somebody is released, they might still not have been sentenced. I can still be active. I still communicate with some people who are closed, but if they need help and I can assist, I'm gonna assist them.
I guess maybe I'm saying, that was nice, but like, I guess I'm saying, can it be mandated that
Mandated?
Monique goes and gets some?
Well, if you're on a mental health treatment court order, it can be, which I do make recommendations for that at times.
Okay.
Because the problem's going to rise again if you don't address the substance abuse
That's
for
what I
mental
was
health issues. So as part of, it's like a mitigation report or sentencing memorandum, that it might be recommended that they continue to follow up with whatever agency, if that's mental health or Great Lakes Bay Health, whatever substance abuse program they need to, because that's what's helping, makes maybe progress in their life.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, does that make sense?
I just want to tell you something that relates to your first question. You'll find for most of the specialty courts, mental health, for example, or the drug court, there's actually referrals that are made. These forms are online. A lawyer makes the referral, Maria, some social worker might, a family member. Anyone can make these referrals based upon, you fill out the form, you can either make a hard
Bluetooth
copy.
disconnected.
You can either make it hard copy, take it over to the district or circuit court clerk, or you could just press the button and it'll automatically, I'm not that great at computers, but I grew up with one in my bedroom, but you know what I'm saying? You can just, but anyone can make those. You'll see the forms, and then you provide the information that you want them to know, and then they'll do an investigation and determine.
The team, so then it goes to a team, there's a mental health court team, specifically if you want to talk about that, where you have a specific judge for that team, you have a defense attorney, you have a prosecutor, you have somebody from the sheriff's department, you have a PO, and then you have a representative for community mental health. That team determines who gets into that program. So even though you make referrals, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get in there. They have their own rules and regulations too.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean you still can't make referrals for just an outside treatment. But a treatment court's really good because you have a whole team of people supporting you and helping you through that process.
This is
Yeah.
good information. Thank you so much.
It's right online if you go to the circuit court, if you go to the Wayne, or the Saginaw County, the Sag court, and then go to the specialty courts, you'll just be able to press a button, and then you'll find for the various places where you can make these referrals. And they'll tell you, and they'll also, there's a criteria, it'll tell you, for certain kinds of offenses, the person wouldn't be eligible and stuff, but it's really all black and white right there on the computer, so if you just go, you'll see exactly.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything else? Any other questions? Yeah. You're my lucky girl today. Yeah.
But I used to be involved quite a bit with the reentry program, and this may be beyond you, or maybe.
Oh, I used to work with that in CMH. I was at
Okay.
CMH.
So do you see it coming back?
I don't know. I mean, I just, from a personal perspective, not the defender's office,
Right.
I can say that just a lot of resources have just really, and that even staff, you know what I mean? At our office, we're down 5 attorneys. I know community mental health has, their numbers have gone down too, which just makes the services even more difficult. So it was a good program. I mean, it really linked those people up with services as soon as they were returning. And it was huge, yeah. But I did work with that. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, I have some business cards I'll put out so you guys can have them. If there's not any other questions, thank you. Oh, yes?
Yeah, okay, so mine is running. And you named a lot.
I did. And I didn't even say everything.
She did.
So
So my question is, are you underutilized or overworked, which we equate to underfunded? And if it's a scenario where we're, I guess, are people utilizing the services in an equitable fashion, or do we see trends of who seems to take the best advantage of services offered
That is
versus who does not?
That's really good. So I would say I am underutilized, but I am still a bit overworked. But I think that I could definitely, we need more social workers in defenders' offices, I think, period. But I think I was so just stuck on what you initially said. Can you repeat the rest of the question?
So that's a good one. So it's like, yeah, more people should be utilizing you, but you're still overworked.
Right.
Like,
Right. Well, because, and it's hard. Any type of change takes time. And it's adjustment to have a social worker in a defender's office because in a lot of offices we're afraid to have a social worker because we're mandated reporters. So what if we hear things we're not supposed to hear? But my capacity at the defender's office, that's why I'm not clinical. Because Laura has not said anything quite yet about those things. So I think it's just, overall, I am being utilized more and more, but I think that's why I'm also enjoying this space more so people do know more to help encourage offices to use more people like me.
And I guess another part of the question was, do we see a trend in what segment of the population is best utilizing these services? Because it takes a certain acumen and structure around you to even know how to advocate for yourself for certain services to be utilized. So a lot of times, some people who need it the most, that's always a very specific population over and over and over again.
Definitely.
And you guys see that, like.
I mean, I can say that I do, and that's why I encourage if there's family members or other people in the community that they have somebody that's maybe in jail or has a case that's with us, that they can utilize me and reach out to me to see if I can be in service, because all attorneys don't know what everybody's needs are. It's impossible. You know what I mean? So that's a lot of weight just to put on an attorney to be the one to identify and recognize all these things. So, does that answer?
Yeah, it does.
It does. I mean, it's kind of like a fluid thing. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I love that question.
If I could add just a little bit, actually, I like that question too.
Yeah.
But I like that question because it does target something that even I, as an attorney, look for. Previously been in a public defender's office. This model that they're doing, trying to do this wraparound, holistic service, I would suggest, is different, and it's challenging in some aspects the status quo of how lawyers practice. Right? As a defense attorney, I'm thinking client-centered, focus on this particular client. I'm not thinking about the psychosocial all the time, because those issues may not necessarily be present. Now, I draw a little bit of experience from prior social work, so I can connect on those different levels, but that's not always the standard for the bar in the county. Right? And then there's the other aspect of the individual's willingness. Where are they in that stage of change and wanting to engage services? So the lawyer has to sometimes vet some of that information out before even going to talk to Ms. Roman.
Yeah, because everything is voluntary. I mean, I can call you and be like, you don't have to call me back. You know what I mean? It's all voluntary. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a general question. How can we, as the community, help you guys be a better resource? How can Saginaw CAP partner with you? How can another organization, or Women of Colors, or any other, partners in the community, how can we partner with you or come up with some things together to, help you guys be a better resource?
My immediate answer is by doing things like this, by allowing us in your space and the tabling things like that's, I think the more that it's out there and known that we want to be accessible and these are things that we are striving for, that it will organically happen more. I don't know, I guess that's the best answer I have for that right now.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay.
It's also, that whole idea, the ideal goal is a holistic approach. The goal is we want to eliminate recidivisms. We want to put people in a position to be whole. There's a basic assumption that on an easier level playing field, people want pleasure rather than pain, as a general rule. So, there are areas in which the community, which we could partner, that would be of such assistance to me. For example, in Wayne County, and it was through just a wonderful recorders court judge that was there at the time, that set up a special program in the community with employers that would be willing to hire people that are going through the criminal justice system or have a prior felony conviction, and there were connections between the courts and it was also affiliated with one of the religious communities as well. But there was a way to assist people so that they were in a better position to be successful human beings. It's not good enough to correct one of the problems, but with all these other vulnerabilities, and then expect you're going to get a different result. So I could see a partnering of a number of different agencies in order to assist ultimately, and helping someone that's not only charged with a criminal offense, but the families who are so often, harmed, the women and the children of these families. And we don't in the court system, we don't generally think any further than that one person. We aren't seeing that person as a part of a community and a part of needs.
Well, we forgot about
and there always has to be, there just always needs to be, the goal is to make a working, successful, and happy community, including these people who have, misstepped for whatever reasons. And
well, there's reasons
so
why.
I can see a lot of, yes, of course, but I'm saying there's a lot that can be done. You can't just throw people with impediments out of the system and then just assume that they're going to be successful.
Right.
So, like I said, finding places, having a resource, for example, where we could say, no, there's no excuse, you haven't got a handicap, we got a job for you, this man will take you in, this man will give you a job to do in the interim. Things that, and it is amazing really, employment, I think, solves a lot of the problems of criminality.
It does.
Having meaning and having meaning. And in fact, I had clients in Wayne County that participated, and then they go on and get a $17, they had training while they were doing it, and have a $17 an hour job afterwards. Did you know what I'm saying? And it was just, but it needs to start somewhere. And it's like, when you're in a position of vulnerability, it helps a lot to have people that you can communicate with that will help.
What's true, and that is stuff that we're trying to work on already, with building relationships with agencies and things like that, because employability is huge. You know what I mean? Like, how can you even, people lose, if you're on Social Security, you've been in jail for a certain amount of time, you lose your income. Then you've already back behind. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many little steps. There's so many things that I think could be simple fixes, but they're not. But that's where my head is at with trying to build those relationships. Yes?
You also, we've talked a lot, and it seems like it's kind of geared toward adults. What about juvenile? Is there
Our office right now doesn't be, it's for adults.
Okay.
Yeah.
I heard we're going to start, or there's some talk that we're going to at some point be doing.
Okay, thank you.
At this point.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Give Maria another hand, please. Great information. Thank you so much.
Anyone that wants those ACLU hand-ups, they're all there. So just take, I didn't know how many copies to bring, so I know the people.
I know she will, for sure. All right. I just wanted to now, before we disperse, just opening up the floor. Do you have anybody have any other? We have a couple attorneys in the house. Do y'all have any legal, questions or anything? I know they can't go all the way, but anybody have any questions or any anything you want answered or anything like that? Anybody? Nothing? Nothing? All right.
You know what, I do.
Okay.
So, I battled a case in the courts, and any one of you guys can feel free to answer. I don't know who's all attorneys in here, but anyway, I fought a case against the police. Basically, I got arrested and locked up over, I guess you would say, padded story. Anyway, long story short, with about 1 million court cases and about a year later, they threw everything out. I was told by one of the attorney who handled it at the time that I would be reimbursed, like my bond money and everything. Because on the paperwork it says I had a PR bond, negative. I paid to get out of jail. The judge was kind of confused, so he just threw everything out and dismissed everything. So am I due for a refund? Because I was told I'm gonna need that in case I am, because I had to pay. My car got impounded and everything. Keep in mind, my car, I'm a licensed driver and I have a business, and it's insured. So yeah, I had to pay like $600 for an impound, and I had to pay a bond to get out of jail, and everything was thrown out. I have 2 judges on the same day, and they had no idea what was going on.
I'm kind of confused on the bond.
I am too.
We're kind of confused here on the thing because you had a person with cognizance bond, so that should.
They gave me that.
You shouldn't have had to pay anything. Now, if you had it, it's something.
She said they gave her that after she got.
Yeah, I was already out. I had already paid and got out of jail.
Oh, and then you got. Oh yes, well you're entitled.
On the paperwork it said I was on a PR bond, but that's a negative.
Okay, and the money wasn't taken for some other excuse of a court administrative fee or whatever. They threw everything out. Okay.
No, like they paid and then they released me from jail.
Well, yeah, I, without knowing all the specifics and circumstances and stuff like that, but it seems to me that you would be entitled to that money back.
Okay,
I see no reason. There's like technical things like with claim and deliver and all sorts of stuff like that, but first of all, I'd want to go and find out, like, you have a receipt or something that you had
Yes, ma'am.
from them?
And the court got a receipt too.
Okay, the court's got a receipt too. So what I would do then is I think I'd go over to the district court, really, and I would explain to them that I had paid this or whatever, and then if maybe they could straighten it out, the clerk there can straighten it out. If not, it can be taken to the judge that you were in front of. That could go to like.
Okay, so if I've done that and then contacted the judge and then they don't even remember me being there.
Yeah, well,
then we're on this.
Okay, well, here's the deal. Go to the circuit court and show them, say, hey, I paid this money in, and the case is dismissed, and it wasn't whatever, and there was initial downstroke, and I'm entitled to this like that. Because that money taken is kind of like an interim bond. So, they gave you a PR bond, that wasn't, that you didn't forfeit that money. You're entitled to it back. So, the other question is, my name is Pat. If you go over there to the counter and they're giving you a hassle and stuff, well, I'm over there, give me a name and I'll try to figure it out. Okay. Every moment I'll try to see what's going on. It doesn't, you're entitled to that money as well. Get your money.
Get your money. Get your money. Thank you, Jeremy.
Bye, Jeremy. Nice to see you. Bye, Jeremy. Oh, wait.
Another engagement to get to, I'm already ready.
Pitch. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions? Hearing none. Man, thank you guys so much for coming. Give yourselves a hand. Give yourselves a hand. This has been great information being given. And, to my Facebook audience out there, this isn't the only time we're going to do this. We're going to do this again. And so, thank you. Please feel free to eat all of our food. We don't want to take it home. And we got cookies, chips, all kind of stuff. So if you got a sweet tooth, handle that. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, give her the card because she got a hold of you. She got a hold of you. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If you call Maria, you get a hold of you.
Okay, okay.
Facebook, thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Maria's